Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. On the panel with me today is Ms. Diane Knight and Mr. Ian Mann. Our secretary is Ms. Crystal Harland, and our assessor is Mr. Jeremy Pohl. My name is Bill Moretsky, and I will be chairing the meeting today. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will hear items 1, 3, and 6 on our docket today. Ms. Harlan, can you please affirm the assessor and the applicant for the first item's testimony?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to put Mr. Story in the waiting room. Thank you, Mr. Assessor. Would you please state your full name?
Jeremy Reinpool.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Applicant, would you please stand? Thank you. Would you please state your full name?
Carson John Horsborough.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Thank you.
Okay, our first property on the docket today is item number 1303 Selkirk Avenue. This is an application for revision of the amount of the assessed value. Mr. Pohl, can you please begin your presentation?
File number is 25338. Roll number is 1401016300. It's for 303 Selkirk Avenue. The 2026 assessment is for $1,112,000. The property is a bank or credit union. We treat it as banks. Same for assessment purposes. Built in 1977. We have a leaseable area of approximately 8,100 square feet. There is no basement area. If you turn to page 2 and 3 of my brief, shows the location of the property. It's on Selkirk and Charles. You see that it is about a block and a half down from Main Street. And then on page 3 just shows some exterior photos of the property, given the location. Let's turn to the next page. We have our comparables. On page 4, we have 10 comparables. These are all major national branch or banks. We have an weighted average and a median rent of $33.23, $31.61, and $32. Again, these are major banks in suburban areas. The problem for assessment purposes with this particular property is it is about a block and a half down from Main Street on Selkirk. There are no national banks located along Selkirk Avenue or in this area. So when we looked at the property, the department looked at the property, we downgraded the parameters on this property. And I'll go through them now, which is on page 5. You see that we've broken out the bank at 4,850 square feet, and we put a storage area in at 3,250. Typically, we would not do that. The bank lease typically encapsulates the entire bank, inclusive of any storage that would be on. In this case here, we have. So that, in effect, when we combine it with the lowering of the parameters that we put on the property to account for the location and the non-national bank tenancy that's here, we see that we have an average of $12.58 applied to the 8,100 square feet. So we're about a third down in PGI, a third of the, if it was a national brand, national location, major institute, we're about, a third of what it would typically be assessed at. So from that point on, we do have standard parameters. So we have a PGI of $101,967, 2% vacancy. Banks, credit unions, they don't sit vacant. Even if they're change of use to a different use, they usually better built, as you can see of the location subject property. They're always better built, whether it be a national or national brand. Banks or the physical sticks and stones of the buildings are always superior to usually the regular stock property that you'd be looking at. So 2% is our standard parameter for that. Vacancy produces an effective gross income of $99,920. Our expenses non-recoverable 3%. Our shortfall $88 are both modeled. Produces an NOI of $95,634. Again, then we look at capitalization rate. You would not see an 8.6 on a major bank, given the location that it's in. There was a downgrading of parameter here, obviously at 8.6%. We're encapsulating the risk along with the reduced rent to make an allowance for this location here. So capped at 8.6 gives us a 1,112,000 stabilized or rounded. So that's the assessment that I would like to confirm today. I'll just go through the I&E that we have on the back, page 8. Just to confirm, they are owner occupied. Their expenses have been reported. And the only thing I omitted from the I&E is I have the cover page, but I didn't bring the rest of it in. They have a financial statement for the actual bank itself, the operations of the bank. I didn't think that was related to the state, so I omitted that. With that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Horsburgh, do you have any questions on the assessor's presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few questions. If the board will follow me to page 4, Mr. Cole, you noted that these are all national banks, save for comparable number 10. Did you look at any leases for credit unions?
These are the leases we had available to us at the reference date. At the range that they're in, my experience is they're at around a $25 to $35 range, average around 30. This is a good sampling of.
Just one more follow-up question. Did you look for any comparables in similar neighborhoods to the subject?
I did not explore that, given how we value the property. But as far as looking into Selkirk Avenue, there are a few older banks bank, I should say this right. There are a few older bank buildings that were converted to other uses, but there are no along, no, there's no banks along Selkirk, there's no banks along Pritchard, there's no banks along, the one that was there. There's one on Main Street that's no longer located. Also, there are no banking institutes in the nearby vicinity for this.
So you would agree this is the only kind of financial institution in that region?
Yes.
And then just on page 5, just regarding the storage rate, were there any rent comparables for the storage rate provided in the disclosure?
No, at around an $8 rent. I didn't think it'd be a point of contention.
Oh, fair enough. And then any support in the disclosure for the shortfall rate of $8 a square foot?
No, that's a model parameter.
That's a model parameter. Okay, thank you. And then is it fair to say that the cap rate was adjusted to reflect I guess the risk that comes with the location?
Location, yes, rent, obviously, that's why I tried to make the comparison when you're taking it down to a third of what it typically would put at, or to be a pretty big allowance at the top end. And then we made a significant allowance at the bottom end for the cap rate as well. So.
Great. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions on the assessor's presentation?
Just at the beginning, you said the date built was 1977. So is it 1977 or 1966?
1966, that I misspoke, then I apologize.
Okay, that's all I wanted to make sure of. Thank you.
Mr. Mann, do you have any questions for the assessor?
I do, just following up with Ms. Knight's question, the 1966 build, I'm looking at the photos and not professing any particular expertise, but this does not look like a 1966 build. It looks as though there have been some renovations. Is that taken into account into the effect of your built, or?
Not for this purpose, no. I looked at it as well. I looked back for any permits that would have been major permits. I didn't find any major permits. I see the picture that you see, the PLC. It looks like a very improved building. Not typical of the stock that you would find along Selkirk Avenue. Better way of saying it. But no, I didn't find anything that was out of line for permits. Not saying we have every single permit that say PP&D would have.
Right.
But I did a look, but it does look like it's not a 1966 building. It does look like it's been improved, but I can't tell you.
Fair enough. The land plan area and the facing or the front page of your report indicates 0 underground, 0 outdoor parking. The parking lot that is attached to the credit union as shown in the pictures on page 3, is that part of the plot, 3.591? Yes. Okay.
And those parking stall counts, if they're indoor or outdoor, they only show up as if they're paid. We have a value income stream towards it. If we don't put an income stream towards it and there's none here, it won't show up as any parking identification because they're not income generated.
Right. Okay, thank you. Now a question as well with respect to the rent. You indicated on a couple of occasions that the rent had been downgraded. Was that downgraded by the modeling process, or was that a separate input that was prepared by you?
It was not an override by an assessor. It was this location. We have a lesser parameters. We have an adjustment to make the parameters appropriate. So it's still a model parameter, but it's taken into account everything associated with this property's location. So it's not going to put a bank like it can't put. You're not going to have a $25 to $35 bank rate here.
Right.
That's what the department's tried to keep up with when one assessment is built from one cycle to the next. So that parameter is in place, but it is still a model parameter.
Okay, thank you. And similarly, with respect to the cap rate, you indicated that had been increased, I guess, to the 8.6. That was done as well as a result of the inputs into the modeling program?
It's a characteristic we have on this particular income stream to produce a higher cap rate than would be if it be and like I said, a national bank in a different location.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have anything more, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mann. All of my questions have been asked or answered. Yeah, just some more clarification maybe on how the model came up with this. So just to confirm, you plug in, you input the location being the Selkirk Avenue, and this model generated these figures. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, the roll number accounts for the location, the roll number accounts for the characteristics of the building. If there's any improvements, your build is still 1966. But it also takes into account when you do the regression analysis as far as how it pulls rents. You're not like it'd be a big miss if you put like I said, a $25 to $35 or so rent here. It just couldn't be. Same for the capitalization rate. So rather than making an assessor going into an individual adjustment every single cycle, we have a parameter adjustment for the rent, we have a parameter adjustment for the cap rate that follows through to the next year or the model rerun when the create any model. Those are permanent adjustments that are made for this location, so it's continually catching and downgrading this property given the situation of it.
So if this bank at the same age it is, it was in a different well, it's different area. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe a little bit more upgraded area. What would the cap rate be then? Would it,
Depends on your build, depends on location size, but typically you'd be in the lower 6, maybe even into the higher 5s.
yeah, like I said, the same age. If it was the same age.
The same, well, if it's the exact same age, it would also have to take into location, but also you'd have to take into the tenancy as well. Like, you're not going to find a major bank, and if this building was put in another location, you're still not going to find a major bank operating out of it. It just wouldn't suit their needs. Major banks don't occupy a building as such, so that risk would need to be reflective of that as well. It'd be similar to, say, if you take a retail location, you have a mom and pop, or you just do general restaurant or whatever entrepreneur, or if you put like a McDonald's or Tim's or whatever, those two things aren't parallel. You got to make an adjustment for that. So they're going to get a higher rent for the national brand, even you're going to get a better building. They're just not going to locate in a 1966 kind of building as it's suited here. So
Sure. Okay, I understood. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions. Anything in summation, Mr. Pohl?
no. Thank you.
Okay. Then we will move to the applicant. You may begin in your presentation, Mr. Horsburgh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as previously alluded to, the subject property is 303 Selkirk Avenue, owned by, or owner-operated property by a median credit union. So if the board will follow me to page 4. Subject property has been assessed as a bank with a gross leasable area of 8,100 square feet. The assessed value is $1,102,000. MNP has valued the subject property, and we have determined a market value of $807,000. The board will follow me to page 5, the executive summary. This application for revision, there are really 4 main points of contention. One, the rental rate applied to the mezzanine space. I have approached that space differently than the assessment department. As well, the vacancy rate has been understated for a retail corridor with a materially higher leasing risk. Third point of contention, an understated shortfall allowance that is inconsistent with the site-specific considerations for a property of this type located on Selkirk Avenue, about a block and a half from Main Street. For the capitalization rate, again, doesn't reflect the risk from the site-specific nature regarding the property. So with that, I'll get into my presentation. So the board will follow me through page 7, the approaches to value. this would be considered an income producing asset. It would trade on the market on the basis of the income it's capable of producing, and as such, we have applied the income approach in valuing the subject property. Moving on to page 8, this discussion of hypothetical conditions, extraordinary and limiting conditions, as well as some relevant case law on page 9. Scope is provided on page 10. I have not yet been out to inspect the subject property. I hope to have some time this winter to go out and visit the location. And on page 11, again, the authorized use of this report is, of course, for the City of Winnipeg Board for Vision. So we move on to page 13. The current assessment is provided. I won't, it's already been spoken to. And if we move on to page 14, I have prepared our income analysis of the subject property. We have valued the property using a potential income of $93,125 as opposed to $101,967,000. As well as we have applied a vacancy rate of 5% as opposed to 2%. And the shortfall allowance of $5,075 as opposed to $1,296 takes us to a net operating income of $80,740. Divided by a capitalization rate of 10%, we arrive at $807,000. Moving on to page 15. We've seen probably similar photos before, just aerial photographs of the property. And then on the 2 subsequent pages, just more exterior photographs of the property. If we move on to the next page, I do apologize, this is the page after 17. The page numbers have changed. I do apologize for that, but under the heading 12, valuation, we look at the potential income. So potential income of the property, it is a bit of a unique property in the sense that you have the main floor area, and then you kind of have a open atrium, and then a type of I guess mezzanine space that would be mixed kind of second floor and mezzanine space. So main floor has a leasable area of 4,850 square feet. The mezzanine area, 3,250 square feet. The city assessor's gross potential income of $101,967,000 equals out to approximately $12.59 per square foot. So now we have looked at this property a little bit differently, and we've quantified the different rental rates a little bit differently. So, there are a few reasons why main floor retail space and second floor retail space, why they attract different rents. So limited accessibility, of course, being one. No street visibility on a second floor unit. Secondary use normally for this type of space, in this case, storage, and then of course reduced foot traffic as well. If it's main floor retail, you walk in. So it's the market norm is that retail is main floor throughout Winnipeg. That's just the standard. So moving on to the next page, I do speak to how we've arrived at our determination of market rent. So we've looked at a few different properties. I found these leases from city evidence disclosures. So these were all considered to be banks as per the city parameters. So we can see that the rental rates for these properties, I've done my best to try to find some comparable properties, not just in the main retail plazas throughout Winnipeg, try to find some more secondary locations. So you look at Portage Avenue, that's a downtown bank space. You look at 620 Kildare, Marion, Keewatin, out on Henderson. So I've done my best to look at some comparables from different areas throughout the city, some older properties, some credit unions, etc. So the leases, as per this table, range from $14.89 a square foot to $36.70 a square foot. Now, if we move on to the next page, we've also looked at retail leases in some neighborhoods that have some challenges similar to the subject property. Looked at a few properties in the West End, north end. And we've seen that retail rental rates in these areas range from $10 a square foot to $16.85 a square foot. So if the board will follow me on to the next page, it shows us page 5 on the bottom. So one of the challenges you have when you're valuing a property like this, how do you determine what an appropriate rental rate is for the mezzanine space? And how do you determine what an appropriate rental rate is for the main floor area, understanding that it is in a socially economically challenged neighborhood in Winnipeg? So we've ultimately selected $12.50 per square foot for the main floor area. And then we've actually quantified an adjustment for the second floor area. So typically we see mezzanine and second floor spaces rent from anywhere to 20 to 40% below what main floor rents are achieved. And on the next page, I can provide how we've gone about quantifying that adjustment. So if the board will follow me to the subsequent page, discussion of the mezzanine space. So what I've prepared here is a paired lease analysis. So I've looked at properties that have both main floor space and second floor space, leases signed in similar points in time. And then I've quantified the difference in terms of what kind of rent is being achieved. So we can see it ranges from anywhere from 19.5% to 48%. So ultimately we've applied a discount of 20%, and we've arrived at a rental rate of $10 a square foot for the mezzanine second floor space. Moving on to the next page, page 7. Now, so we blend these two rents, and we arrive at a blended rental rate of $11.50 a square foot, just slightly less than the $12.59 used by the city, which gives us a total potential income of $93,125. So the board will follow me now to the next page. I'm gonna have a sip. So the vacancy allowance. Subject property has been assessed with a vacancy rate of 2%. It is difficult to ascertain what the actual rental rate is in the north end, and I'll speak to that in a little bit here. The December 22 Johnson report it pointed to a vacancy rate of 1.4% in the north end. But if one drives down Selkirk Avenue, it's very obvious that the vacancy rate is far higher than 2%, and it's far higher than 1.4%. The buildings that are boarded up outnumber the buildings that are open, and I provided examples on the next page. So the actual retail vacancy allowance, but the actual retail vacancy rate on Selkirk is far higher than 25%. But it's difficult to really ascertain that because no one's really tracking that data, and the vast majority of the properties on Selkirk Avenue are owner occupied. So ultimately, we have applied a vacancy rate of 5%. We believe that's appropriate. On the following pages, I've provided just street view of Selkirk Avenue, just really to highlight what it looks like when you're driving down Selkirk Avenue. I have a few clients that have properties on Selkirk Avenue, so I do go out that way fairly often. But yeah, if you keep flipping through these pages, I've provided the photos. You can see it for yourself, what the state of the retail market is along that corridor. So if we move on now to the shortfall rate discussion on page 15. The city assessor has applied a model-derived shortfall allowance of $1,296. In reviewing the actual operating expenses relating to this building, we did find that the shortfall allowance was understated. So we've based our shortfall rate on the actual operating expenses, not a model-derived formula or anything like that. So if we move on to the next page, I do provide that analysis. If we look at and I believe the assessor has included this same income expense report. It does speak to what the operating expenses are for the subject property. So now if on page 17, we can actually break out what the operating costs are on a square foot basis for the subject property. And it ultimately amounts to about $12.53 a square foot, as opposed to the model derived rate of $8 a square foot. If we move on to the next page, pardon me. I have provided a bit of a discussion as to the capitalization rate. So fundamentally, we value these properties on the income approach because that is the way that the market views them. And again, the capitalization rate reflects risk. Fundamentally, it reflects risk. This property, as already alluded to, there are no other banks nearby. It is a very tough neighborhood to run a retail operation in. And so the capitalization rates that we see tracked by the major real estate companies, they don't really, it doesn't really speak to Selkirk Avenue. It doesn't speak to this type of an asset. So it becomes difficult to determine what's an appropriate capitalization rate for this type of asset when the third parties, their data doesn't really pertain to this type of a property. So what I had to do was I had to start calling around to some commercial realtors. So I picked up the phone, I made some calls. I said, I found a couple of sales. I'm not sure what these properties would rent for. It's difficult to say. A lot of the properties along Selkirk Avenue are owner occupied. I couldn't actually find any leases for properties on Selkirk Avenue. So I called around and I spoke to a few different commercial realtors, and they provided some ideas. 862 Selkirk. That one I was a little bit hesitant to include. One of the realtors that I spoke to said that it was a bakery. Someone else said that it wasn't a bakery. Someone said, if it's a bakery, there's going to be equipment there. They're probably going to be pushing $25-30 a square foot. So I put the least amount of weight on 862 Selkirk, just because by full admission here, there is some uncertainty on that one. But I am more confident in 595 Selkirk and 631 Selkirk. And those properties would have sold with a indicated cap rate of 16.88% and 19.21%. Again, very difficult to ascertain what cap rates properties on Selkirk Avenue are selling for, but this certainly provides an idea. And again, so Selkirk Avenue is unique, and I do speak to that a little bit here on the next page. So again, the capitalization rates for retail properties, they're tracked usually 6 to 7.5%. The city, their model, even it is able to recognize the inflated risk on an asset like this in a location like this. And I don't mean in any way, shape, or form to speak down or to speak negatively about the area. When my ancestors came to Winnipeg, they lived in the North End. My great-great-grandfather had a house on Alexander, one of the first houses built on Alexander. But over the last number of years, over the last probably 50 years or so, things have really changed in the North End, and the public's aware of it. The market's aware of it. Investors are aware of it. So if anyone's going to invest in an area where there's materially higher risk, they're going to require higher reward to compensate them. So hence the 10% cap rate that I've applied. Now I do speak as well, and really this report speaks to itself, but I also do want to touch on a report that I've included in the addenda of my report. This was prepared by the University of Manitoba, I believe, and it does speak to some of the issues along Selkirk Avenue, the history of Selkirk Avenue, and really what's changed. They provide a SWOT analysis. So there are challenges in this area. I think the photos of the boarded up buildings speak for themselves. But certainly I don't want anyone to think that I'm really talking down to this area. I do hope that there's a future and things can turn around there. But the reality is that the market is aware, investors are aware of what's going on there. And then also in the agenda, I just included excerpts that speak to the sales of the properties that I've mentioned and looking at capitalization rates. So then really just to conclude, again, we've looked at this property a little bit differently than the way the city assessors looked at it. City has applied a blended rental rate of $12.59 a square foot. Ours is only slightly lower at $11.50. Vacancy allowance, site specific, shortfall allowance, site specific, cap rate, site specific, not model derived. So with that, I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Page 12 of your report, it's your highest and best use. You indicate that the highest and best use of the subject property is current and present.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
I haven't directed questions yet.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. I thought you did.
Okay, no problem. Okay, Mr. Pohl, do you have any questions on the applicant's presentation?
Yes, I do. Page 12. You indicate that your highest and best use is of the current use as of the present improvement.
Correct.
Then you go towards a aspect of looking at retail.
Sure.
Why would you take a bank and compare it to retail? There are two separate and distinct uses.
Sure. Well, so you have to. I mean, we find ourselves in the same situation in a large degree, to a large degree. You know, we have a property that's it is the only bank in the area. So if we're trying to find bank comparables in that area, there are 10. So we have to look at similar uses. Similar use would be retail. That's why I've looked at it.
To follow up, it's not a different page number, but as you go down, it's your mezzanine argument. It's labeled page 6. I don't believe it's 6, but it's fine. I apologize for that. That's okay. It happens. You're using office comparables primarily for splitting up or difference of your mezzanine areas or second floor areas.
That's correct.
Why would you use a comparison again to the subject property being a bank, credit union, lending institute, not saying like that? Why would you use a significantly different property type class?
Well, so it's really just looking at second floor versus main floor. And I'll admit I couldn't find rental comparables for mezzanine spaces. If I could, I would have presented a paired analysis looking at main floor retail versus mezzanine. I couldn't find any, so all things considered, I felt this was the best way to quantify that kind of an adjustment. And ultimately, I have actually applied a higher rate than what was applied by the city.
As far as actual banking leases, doing this for nearly 20 years, or it's an office nearly 20 years. When you look at a bank, when there is storage areas in the bank, there's always storage areas of some kind. Usually that's in the basement. Depending on your location in a suburban market, it's almost exclusively in the basement. There is always the same lease rate for the entire property. They don't provide a breakout for a storage area. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I've limited experience dealing with banks.
So that would be the question why we would be looking for a difference of, from your perspective, a difference of bank versus storage area. Typically in the market plays out that it is a bank lease rate, one lease rate of this. We made an allowance in this case. I just wanted to point that out. So your issue is that you don't feel that breakout into a storage area is enough of an allowance?
I think you and I have, or the city's model has looked at the property one way, I've looked at the property in a different way.
You look down, you're starting on your page, I guess heading is 12.4 Selkirk Avenue vacant buildings. Just so we're clear, My grandfather grew up, I was 600 block of Pritchard, 1 street over. Good portion of my youth. I'm very much well aware of the issues that are along in this area. But the buildings you've chosen to show along Selkirk Avenue, they are very dissimilar non-banks buildings.
Sure, I would agree with that. What I was trying to accomplish with showing these, again, like a lot of people don't go to that part of town. So really, I'm just trying to show what the area is like and why it's difficult to quantify, what a vacancy rate is when so many buildings are derelict or boarded up.
But you did not show the buildings that are the old Ukrainian veterans building, which is more akin to a bank. There's another building across from there that was a bank, now retail location, converted building. There are better built buildings along this stretch that aren't highlighted here.
Well, I would agree, but again, what I'm trying to accomplish is I'm trying to show why it's difficult to ascertain vacancy, what the streetscape looks like. But I agree, again, I'm not trying to put down the north end, I'm not trying to put down South Avenue. The neighborhood has challenges, but I've got a lot of hope for the area, and certainly there are a lot of good things. I work with a few good nonprofits that own properties on Selkirk Avenue. And they're putting their money where their mouth is, they're doing the hard work. And I have a lot of faith and a lot of hope for Selkirk Avenue and for the north end.
What I'm trying to get to the point is the buildings that you're showing, these are clearly non-investment buildings. No one would be buying this, so that wouldn't be inclusive of any vacancy rate.
Well, see, I think that's up for debate.
Next page over on, I guess again, it's 12.4 cap rate table on page 19. You're using 595 Selkirk, 361 or 631 Selkirk, and 862 Selkirk. You've chosen to use an allowance for vacancy of 2%. You've chosen to use an allowance of expenses at 2%. Why would you choose to use those parameters?
I think I was going off of what I believe was the city income guide. I think we were looking at 2% in that area. Yeah, I probably could have bumped up vacancy to 5%. Probably could have increased the expense allowance as well.
And then lastly, when I'm looking at your indicated cap rate, we're looking at 17.8 or so, 19.2, 13. In the context of market, you see capitalization rates hovering where they are around 6, 7, maybe 8, arguably, depending on what you're looking at. When you see a near doubling or more than that in some cases here, would you not be for looking at the numbers saying, as far as you produce cap rate, is this realistic? Should these be investment properties? Would anyone actually purchase something at a 19% or almost 17% cap rate?
Well, I think in order to take on this kind of risk, as eye-popping as these cap rates are, I really do think that it speaks to the risk, and any kind of investor, if a good solid retail property that you're getting a 7 cap on it, if you're gonna really take on the risk where either really you're going to be operational or you're going to be boarded up, and that's what you have on Selkirk Avenue. It's either operational or it's boarded up. I don't think it's out of line to say, I'm going to need double the reward because I'm taking on double the risk.
Okay. And can you turn lastly to your safer listings? You have those pictures for 2 of the 3 properties. I didn't see the third one, but 862. That's last several page. Would you consider that similar to the subject property?
Well, no, and so this one I had the most confusion on, and I'll put the least amount of weight on it because I heard from 2 different agents or 2 different sort of commercial real estate agents, 2 different things about this property. I mean, it says reliable, I think probably heating and air conditioning, but I had one person tell me this one was a bakery, and one person tell me it was, I don't know, I can't remember what he said. So I admit there's some uncertainty on 862 Selkirk, and I'll place the least amount of weight on that one, certainly.
And then if you look at 530 or 593 Selkirk, it's a retail corner store.
That's correct.
And then the other, I don't see the other building, but these would not be similar to the Selkirk property.
No, again, there aren't any properties along Selkirk that are credit unions or banks. So looking at similar retail or as similar as you can get in terms of retail along that stretch, this is what's out there.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, any questions for the applicant?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to the market leases that you have illustrated on your, I guess, secondary page 3, if I can call it that one, and the first of all, a comparison between the market leases banks that you've presented and the retail market leases for retail property. Is it a general, or would you agree that generally speaking, the lease rates or the market lease rates for banks exceed that of the market lease rates for retail?
Certainly, 100%. I would agree. 9 times out of 10, a bank's going to get a higher rate than a typical retail place.
Yeah, and that's reflected in your in the 2 tables as well. And the lowest rent that you found in the market lease rates for banks was the $14.89.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the $14.89, no address is disclosed on that. So I guess we'll take that as it is. But taking that as the lowest, you have selected a $12.50 rate for rent, which is 22.5%, 23% by quick, in my head math, below that lowest rate that you found. What is the reason that you reduced the lowest rent by another 22%?
Yes, so to speak to that, it really comes down to the location. So if say, and again, I don't know for a fact because I took this from a city disclosure, the address was redacted. So, but we can assume that this is a better location. I'm assuming this is a better location. I don't think there's a worse location for a bank. So you see, okay, say that say if you're call it Class C. So your Class C banks are getting $14.89 a square foot. That doesn't mean that the subject property is going to be able to achieve that. So that's why I've also looked at retail in some of the more challenged neighborhoods. That's really what it comes down to. I can't really hang my hat and say, yeah, they're going to be able to get $14.89, and the city didn't think they'd be able to get that. Or I guess no, that's not entirely correct. So yeah, I looked at the $14.89 on the low end, but given the location, these are all going to be superior locations. So that's my adjustment on the rent. Really just comes down to the location.
Okay, fair enough. Now you referred to a Class C bank. This bank has been, or this credit union rather, has been fairly recently renovated. Are you aware, or do you know when it was renovated?
So I'm not sure when it was renovated. I was at the property once about 4 years ago, but I haven't ever inspected the property in this line of work.
Okay, and there's been a lot of talk as well about the mezzanine, and I would note, I guess parenthetically, that the mezzanine rate you've ascribed to the property is actually more than the mezzanine rate that the city has applied. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The mezzanine, I know there was references that this mezzanine area is on the 2nd floor.
Correct. I guess that's
in the subject property.
Hard to kind of explain it, but yes, you walk into the property, you have the main floor area, you have kind of the center area where the tellers are. I think you've got offices on the side, and then you've got I don't know if you want to call it 2nd floor mezzanine, but it doesn't, there's a bit of an atrium. So it is mezzanine space. If I'm explaining it correctly, it would have been better if I just could include a few pictures, but I haven't been there in recent years.
Okay, fair enough. And just on the cap rates, the properties that you've shown are considerably older than the subject property. That'd be fair to say?
That'd be fair to say.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Just on your page 3, Are all those banks still open?
So Ms. Knight, I know for a fact that 900 Harrow is not, that's one of my clients I represent, 900 Harrow. So I know they're no longer there. At 230 Portage, that was Canadian Western Bank. They're no
Mhm.
longer there. The rest, 270 St. Anne, I believe that one might have been closed too. That might have been the old RBC branch.
Mm-hmm.
That one I believe is closed.
1795 Henderson.
Is that closed?
Yeah,
No,
there's
so
quite a
that's,
few on your list that are closed. That's why I'm asking.
well, that's quite interesting, really. I think
Mhm.
that probably says something.
Yeah, I just wondered why you were using closed out branches that have been closed before the time frame that we're talking about.
Yeah, like my understanding is as of the reference date anyway, that most of these would have still been open. Like Harrow, I think that they've got Harborview Wealth Management in that location there now. But I don't believe that was prior to April 1st, 2023. I would have to double check the rent roll on that
Okay.
property. But
That
no,
that's really
I met
just
some of
my
these have closed in
that's
recent years.
really just my only question is that some of those are closed and they have been closed in this time frame. So that's why I was asking. Thank you.
Well, that's a very good question, good comment. Thank you.
Mhm. That's my only questions. My others were asked and answered.
Okay, thank you. So, how long, this is owner occupied, correct, Mr. Horsberg?
That's correct.
Are you aware of how long it's been occupied?
That I'm not sure of. This was a new client of mine, or else we probably would have filed the appeal last year. I just met with them this past summer.
So even though this is an older building, just the overall quality of the building kind of stands out on Selkirk. Would that be a correct assertion?
I would agree with that.
So if this owner was to choose to sell or another bank came in, a pretty good chance that it'd be attractive for them considering the shape of the building. Would that be correct?
Well, as nice as the building may look, I think overall the market, it kind of speaks for itself in the sense that there are no other banks around. Um, I think if they were to put it on the market, sell it, try to lease it out, I think they would have a very difficult time finding a new tenant. Like the median credit union, the owner or occupier, they are an indigenous owned and operated financial institution. I'm not aware of any other similar local credit unions that would that would be operating in that space and in that niche of the market. So I guess to answer your question, I think that it would be quite difficult to find a purchaser or to find a new tenant if it were to sell.
So this mezzanine that's in there, is it only usable for storage, or you had kind of talked about, renting it out as a separate business? So that leads me to believe that it can be done with that. Is that the case?
Well, I mean, I would, the way I look at it, and I'm going off of a memory of being there about 4 years ago. I think you could put cubicles up there, but I know there's no way you would be able to really rent that out to a separate tenant. It would be too loud. You would have the tellers on the main floor. I don't see it the mezzanine being rented out as like a separate commercial rental unit. I could see cubicles up there maybe, but no, I don't see it being rented out as a separate commercial rental unit.
You mentioned a few times in your presentation risk risk of owning a property in this area. Can you just reflect a little bit on what you mean by that? What is the risk?
Sure. So really, when we look at the expenses, right, that this property has, they spend far more on security, far more on insurance. Um, the risk really comes down to as an investor, if you're going to be purchasing an asset in the retail market, you're going to want to purchase something that really you're located in a neighborhood where you have higher incomes, higher levels of employment, lower crime rates, better health outcomes. So demographically, that area has a lot of challenges, and the market's aware of that. And this kind of a property, there's going to be a risk premium, largely because who's going to rent this property? From a landlord's perspective, if this property was to sell in the market, where do you find the tenant for the property?
Okay. I do not have questions. Okay, now we're going to do official summations. Mr. Pohl, do you have anything in summation?
Yes, I will. I'll be quick. I'll point to what I've seen and heard and kind of where we are with ours. This is a bit of a more of a challenging problem. There is not another comparison or rental comparison that we could use along the Southwark Avenue, the only London Institute that's in that area currently at the reference date. What I heard was the highest and best use is what it is in the, and then we went for exploration from the Helen side into office, into retail, and into significantly different properties to come up with his opinion of value. I don't think that's correct. I'll leave that at your decision, whether you're going to put any weight to that. How we looked at it was we made an allowance for the rent, we made an allowance for the capitalization rate given the location of the building. If I had this building under appeal and hypothetically it was a national bank in this location with a national bank building similar to what you see in a suburban market, would have a basement area, you'd have the above area totaling of 8,100 square feet. If I looked at that with a $30 rent, your PGI would be about 243,000. All their same standard parameters in place that you see, capped at arguably around 6.5%, which is where you kind of think the cap rate would be, right in the middle, not at 5, but not at the 6, not at the 7, but right in the middle. You'd have about a $3.5 million assessed value. With the parameters that we put in place, how we bracketed out the storage area, how we put in the rental rates significantly lower than what other banking institutes are achieving when they're renting in certain locations in suburban office areas, suburban locations, I should say, this there. With your more normalized capitalization rates, you get about 3.5 million. Here you're getting 1.121. So we're at about a 70% reduction off market. If you look at it in that context, I think a 70% reduction off market is fairly reasonable, given how this property sits. I think that's the most appropriate way to value the property. It's using like similar properties as far as lending institutes. It's making allowance for the location, for the two major parameters that you would need to make an allowance for the rent, and obviously the cap rate, which is the risk associated with that. It comes up with a pretty significant reduction for this location. At that, I'll leave it in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything in summation, Mr. Horsburgh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief summation. Ultimately, the onus is on the assessor to prove that their value is right. What we have is a model-derived assessment with nothing but assumptions baked into it. I've provided a site-specific valuation that speaks to the issues, and I really believe that the report speaks for itself in many respects. Admittedly, it's an odd property, difficult location, and I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Okay. That will conclude 1303 Selkirk Avenue. So we'll move on to the next property on the docket, which is item number 2, 301 Notre Dame. This is an application for revision of the amount of the assessed value. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. Yep. That one has been withdrawn. Okay. Sorry. Item number 3, 633 Lodge Avenue. And this is an application for revision of the amount of assessed value, as well as liability taxation and classification. Do we have the applicant available, Ms. Harlan?
We don't, Mr. Chair.
Don't? Okay, well, we will go in camera then and make a decision to move this property to the end of the dock.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go take us offline. Mr. Assessor, can I ask you to wait at the front, please?
Sure. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Okay, we are back in order, and the panel has decided that we will move this property to the end of the docket and that we will hear it as well. So then that makes our next property then item number 6, 124th Street. This is an application for revision of the amount of the assessed value. Ms. Harding, can you please swear in the applicant for this property?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Yes, my name is Jared Story.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pohl, can you begin your presentation for this property?
Their file number is 25491. Roll number is 1209307600 is for 124th. The assessed value is for 2026 is 1,445,000. I do have to frame this appeal correctly. This is not really a preliminary issue you have to make a decision on, but it is something I have to inform you on. For 2025, if you look at the last page of my brief, we had a agreement with the property owner via the property owner's former agent.
What page, sorry?
Last page, page 37, last page.
Page 37.
Yeah. So you can see this was for the 2025, and of course the carryover rule carries over to next year. And this appeal would be, and our argument should, we have an agreement with the owner. The agent is representing the owner in full. We have an agreement. This is typically what happens in our industry, how we appeal. There's no rule in the Municipal Assessment Act that says they can't continue forward to a 2026 appeal. Having said that, it just almost virtually never happens. I don't think it's ever happened in my career, right? Personally, I had to deal with this at a board level afterwards. So from the department standpoint, we had an agreement. We're honoring their agreement at 1,445,000, or sorry, 1,445,000. Now it's down from 1,588,000. Having said that, it's at appeal. It's assigned to me. I'm reviewing the property in full. So I'm still going to carry on with my position. But the department would ask that the board of revision honor or confirm the value that it's at, because we are honoring the agreed upon values. From that point, I'll just get to it like it's a typical. Turn to page 1. Building was built in 1929. We have an effective age or an addition put on 1950. We have effective year built in 1950. The leasable area is 8,364 square feet. There is both an upper and a main. The main is slightly underneath grade, but not a full basement, obviously. You see from the pictures that the agent has put in. And then there is parking at 35 stalls. So we can go to the pictures of the brief. I'll just show you what we're dealing with. The subject property description is on page 11. Built in again, 1929, originally known as the radio building. It has a history of commercial office use. Currently, it's being used by an engineering firm and other consulting firms within the building. I haven't had any interior photos to look at the property. There's none on record. I looked back at the other agents who's represented the property, other assessors who represented the property as far as other appeals. I looked at their evidence. Didn't find any pictures of the interior quality to show the condition, so I was kind of looking, valuing this kind of in the dark. So we go through the property on page 12 and 13, just shows what we have to look at. So it looks like it's a good shape, an older building, but still in good shape. If we look on page 14, you see the parking component at the rearage. It looks like there's a covered section of the parking. If you look on the roof, it does look like there's a covered patio area. Looks like there might be patio stones towards the back of the building. So from that point, I just start my evaluation process as we turn to the INEs. The INEs are on page. Starting on my page 33. There is a leaseable area of 8,363 square feet being reported. You look down, there's 35 stalls. With asterisks, all parking is assigned to tenants and included in the rent income. So we look at the rent income at 168,539, typical expenses that you see. Okay, you're starting to see a forming of that. Next page over, page 35. We see that there's 3 tenants in the building, they're all month to month. And if I do the math right, they're reporting 88,113 square feet of leasable area. Right away, that's kind of alarm bells, because as I go through the INEs, it's always been reported as month to month as far as I found. It's not being reported as net. We see that a month to month lease is an investment grade lease. If you go from month to month, year after year, you're kind of triggers a question in my mind's eye, because you just don't see that typically on a month to month lease. You might see an extension of a prior tenant who's there, they're trying to negotiate, they're there for short term, month to month, possibly before they sign a new deal or vacate, whatever the case may be. Or sometimes you see a higher rent in place because it is more risk to the property owner to have a month to month tenant, maybe get a bit better rent for a brief period of time. Well, that tenant decides what they want to do. Is it an okay location for them? But typically you wouldn't see that in office. You might see that in retail a little bit, but you almost virtually never see it in office. So right away, when I see this year after year, it's kind of an alarm bell. So I do my analysis right away. I'm thinking, are these arm's length tenants? I do my research as we see it, as I'll go through it in a moment. We don't see anywhere that they're reporting on the tenant role that they're owner occupied. I'll check no. And then we don't see on page 33, the first page of the income expense questionnaire, they're not checking fully on our occupied or partial. So it looks like these are arm's length being reported. So perhaps not, and that's why I went through the checks that I did at the front of the brief. So what I do at page 3, and I'll wait for you to get there. We simply look at the titles on file for the property. The registered Manitoba numbered company 31048334. And if we go through each title, there's a few titles here. We see that same numbered company. On page 9, I do the company search of that numbered company. We see Victor Thielman on the look to the lower part of page 9. And on page 10, middle part of page 9, as far as stakeholders and common ownership. Okay, so that's what we have for the real estate. We look at page 11. Again, we have spoke there. Start on page 15. Looking at the tenants. First one didn't turn up anything. I don't personally do the company searches or the title searches. I hand it off to data services. They put in exactly what I tell them to put in. this came back. There was nothing here. So I can't confirm whether this is, whether this RDS lighting is owner occupied or not, but I don't have any information on that tenant. We look at the next property or the next tenant in the property. Go through the same check and balance. Again, this one, I don't find any common ownership between the two. And that ends at page 21. If we look at, starting at page 23, Nova 3 Engineering. Nova 3 Engineering, you do find common ownership for Victor Thielen. So there does seem to be, appear to be common ownership between the property owner, Nova 3, and the tenant, which is occupying it. So when I get back to the INEs, you look at the INE, that's book rent. The reported incomes that are being generated from the parking, being inclusive of the lease, are inclusive of a book rent. To what degree, I can't say for sure. Part of this is going to be discovery, and when I ask questions to the panel, Mr. Story, we'll try to ascertain that. But generally, what I'm looking at, when I'm looking at the 15-1 that was agreed upon, the assessor did seem to put weight into the inclusiveness of the rent roll as far as what was on rent, with the parking associated with that being inclusive. After looking at that, I can't make that same determination. So I'm looking at it from a fee simple basis, unencumbered by lease. Clearly, there's a degree, whether it's in whole or part owner occupied. I don't know the other two tenancies that are working underneath Nova 3. Are they separate? Are they part of the company? I'm not sure. We'll get to that in a moment. But then I go through my analysis as far as just your how we're going to value. So starting on page 25, usually we would bring in a large portion of the downtown that really isn't necessary now, given the location. Very well versed in downtown parking. I do all aspects of it. On page 25 are your three nearest comps. Your parking lots. We have 277 stalls. They're monthly and they're daily parking. We see that stabilized NOI per stall is $107 a stall, $137 a stall at 93. You see that the weighted averages are 112, 121, or sorry, the average and weighted averages is 112, 121, and the median at 107. What we had under file was a few different model parameters we put on. There's $103.50 per square foot for typical downtown parking. There's a less periphery, or if your property is significantly below that or not performing as well, we do put an $80 rate on it. There's other rates too for further off outside of downtown. That's what we had on file as far as parking component. I won't go through that because I will have a revised position, but typically it was 35 stalls at $80, and that produces a net operating income of 33,600 capped at 5.2 per 6,000. Moving on to the property itself, the building, I looked at it as this was you're going to be in your C range, you're going to be in your D range. That's going to be the tendency, depending on what's in the building, how's it finished. Typically, engineering firms have a higher level of finish, a better finish quality of property. I don't know that yet. We haven't. We don't have any information as far as close to the reference date pictures, any advertising leases, anything. Nothing that I can. So I'm in what condition it is. Not too sure on at this point. So what we're typically looking for an OFD, you're looking at $11.62. And then if you're looking at an OFC, you're looking at around the $12.50 or $12 range, and around there. And again, that's average. If it's at average, it should be around $12. If it's above average, it gets close to 13, 14. So at page 28, we see what we have, and that's $9.95 a square foot. Again, that's inclusive of what we see as far as what the model was prior. We have. I'm not going to go through it here. It produces a value. $850,600. That was what was under model. And of course, on the next page, 29, we have at the very bottom, what we agreed to at 145,000 or 1,445,000. Of course, the value that was originally in place was 1,580,000. So the reduction was made down. Typically, you wouldn't see this because you make the adjustment to the roll. You never come back to appeal because you had a 15-1, it carries over to the next tier. So panel never reviews this without these arrangements are made without prejudice. They're not supposed to be back at appeal. We don't reference them. But in this case here, because of what happened, we're at appeal. So on page 30 is my analysis of the property. What I would see it, how it sits. I have two analyses on it on page 30 and 31. Both include an increase in parking back to the model parameter at $103.50 a square foot. I think that's warranted. It is very strong parking for this location. It did look, if you're looking at it from a contract basis, if it was parking associated with leases in place, you can see on an assessor would go, okay, maybe this isn't producing as well. That's not the case. It's owner occupied in part or maybe in whole, but get to that in a moment. So I put it back to the original model parameter that it should have been at $103.50. So on both instances, it produces a net parking revenue of 43,470, capped at 4.5%, which is our standard parameter for that. Gives us a surface parking indicated value of 966,000 for both incomes. The question I have in my mind's eye is, given that it's an engineering firm, is it average finish? Is it below average finish? Is it above average finish? Given the occupancy of engineering firms, you typically wouldn't see below average. So I assumed that would be at average or maybe a bit above average. So I did two workups on that. One with a $12, the $12 rent, which would be average, and one at $14 rent, which is above average. So again, the upper floor, which is the over 3, is that above average? Is the lower floor maybe a bit below average? I don't know this at this point. So from that point, you can see the numerics that are put in place. We have a revised assessment of $2,325,000 if it is above average for the both 3 CRUs that are in the building. And then on page 31, it's just an average at $12 a square foot. We have a value of $2,110,000. So after my review and how I looked at it, I don't think the 15-1 I would have agreed to recommend it to management. The 15-1 that was in place was, again, we were looking at it as, well, what's the performance of the building, of the property? We have a parking that's inclusive of the rents. Okay, that's pretty low. And out came the 15-1 after review. Having said that, I don't think that's something that we should do in the future for this property. So I do think we should be honoring the $1,445,000. That's what I'm asking for the board. That's what the department's asking for the board. My independent look at it is it should be somewhat north of that, depending on the finish that you find and the quality finish that you find within the building. So that I'm with.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Story, do you have any questions on the assessor's presentation?
Yes, I do, sir. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Pohl, I believe now we've discussed this just in the interest of disclosure. We have discussed this and we can agree this is something of a unique situation. Is that fair?
Yes.
With regard to the 15-1, it's not, I think you mentioned you've never seen this before, but that is not, that there's no way that's possible. I mean, this does happen from time to time. Is that not?
My personally, I've never dealt with appeal in 21 years of doing this. At a board where I've had to explain a 15-1 that was agreed upon for the next year of the single cycle.
Okay.
Another assessor has had it done.
Right. Okay. That's fair.
You have a rarest of occurrence where.
Yes, I agree. And I fully agree with you, but we'll get to that in my presentation. But let's just talk about the building. So you have not inspected this property, is that correct?
No.
Okay. And has anyone from the city inspected this property in recent years or at all to your knowledge?
I didn't find any pictures. We have typically when we go for an inspection, you're taking pictures, so you don't have
Right.
to keep inspections. I didn't find anything on file. I can't comment if perhaps someone went there. No, I don't have any knowledge of that.
Okay, so you said, and you've written in your brief here that the previous agent had not submitted photos, but I pulled the evidence from the board, and I can submit to you that there are indeed 13 photos of the interior in the 2020 brief. Did you have the opportunity to review that?
No, I didn't catch that when I went back to the last one for the last appeal, but no, I didn't catch that. I must have missed that. I apologize.
Nope, that's okay. And I did note that it was not, you were not the agent or the assessor attending to that file, but I did review and can confirm. Okay. Now just on your first page, and to be fair, I'm not disputing the NOI today. This is a matter of cap rate only, so I'll limit my questions to that matter. Is that capitalization rate model derived or model generated?
Yes, my understanding here, everything was model derived, with the exception that, given that there was a 15-1 done.
Sure.
Went back in there and there's a bit of variation between what was on the roll and what's currently there.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So I presume then when if you didn't see the 2020 brief, then you wouldn't have seen the quotes for work that were submitted to the board in support of the reduction dated to 2015. Is that a fair comment as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Was there an order on that, or was there 51 on that?
On 2020?
Yeah.
I believe there's an order between Fairtax and Mr. Dolinsky. I believe it's a board order, but I can double check that. But I believe there's
Mr.
an order.
Dolinsky did leave around that time.
Okay, fair enough.
There's some glitch there.
Yep, that's okay. Okay. On your first page, it says it's indicating that there are 2 buildings, but there's 1 building, correct?
Just 1 building, yes.
Yeah, okay. And also the actual year built, you're showing 1929 to 1950, but can we agree that 1950, that's the parking lot that we'll be discussing a bit today?
Yes, I didn't, maybe I'll clarify. I look back at the permits as far, one of my checks is always looking back at the permits to see what was done to the building.
Mhm.
If it's just general stuff, I don't bring the permits in. You can just say it's general. If there's a major tenant improvement or whatever, I'll bring that in. I didn't find anything. As far as back as looked, it's been an over 3 property and the same tenants that have been in place with no improvements of any kind that would be measurable.
Right, I understand. But the reason that I asked Mr. Pohl is the effective year that's being listed here is matches that year built of 1950. So is that a coincidence that the year the parking lot was built, 1950, is the effective year that's being applied in the model, or what gives rise to that adjustment to 1950?
I didn't research that aspect of it. I'm simply asked. I brought forth the exterior condition, and obviously I brought it before the board. I'm questioning what the interior would be, and that would go along with the condition of the building and the life cycle of the building.
Okay. Okay. And you said that you looked for permits. Can we agree then that there has been no substantial work, just some tenant work? And I believe the last or the most recent permit was at about 2012. Is that your understanding as well?
I didn't find anything that stuck out.
Okay. Okay. Your page 15, obviously that this is talking about RDS. That image, that's Kalmayork. That's the extension of the art gallery, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And on the next page,
not the subject property, obviously.
yeah, no, but I asked for a specific reason. On the next page, that discuss BOD, that is not the premise within our property, correct?
No. These are from RDSD Lighting's website as far as who they are.
Precisely. This is their project. Yeah.
And vision and objective detail. Those aren't in the building. That's
okay. I just want to make sure we're all aware that that's not what we're dealing with. Okay. Perfect.
That's just from their website when I'm doing the company checks versus who owns what.
Nope, that's fine. Okay, now in terms of the parking, now and I'll speak to the degree to which this property is owner occupied, certainly, but the parking lot, to be fair, is not an income generating lot in the downtown, correct?
Here's our distinction. We look at it from a fee simple unencumbered by lease, so yes, it would be an income producing property. A part
Okay,
of the
but
property.
I understand, but that would be theoretical at this point, as no tangible income is being driven from
Whether-
the parking.
Whether it's owner occupied or not, we treat it the same way. If it's being held out to the department that those rents are inclusive of leases, it's being held out that it is an income property and it's inclusive of the leases. What I'm exploring is this an owner occupied property in full, and was that reported correctly?
I understand that, but what I'm driving at, sir, is there's no additional income coming to the owner by way of renting out these stalls on a scattered basis or on a monthly basis or any such thing. It's not being advertised to the market, and that very well may be a business decision, but currently this income is theoretical in nature. Is that fair?
If it's being used as an owner occupied property, would it never be listed? And if it's been that way for ever since I've been looking at it. Or look back towards, then yeah, you wouldn't see it on the market or offer to the market, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be able to produce an income. There's lots of properties that are owner occupied that we still
Right.
put value to.
Yep,
As far as
but
income.
no, I understand that, but just in terms of dollars and cents and what is accruing as an annuity to the owner, there's that is theoretical income based on your approach, but there's no actual income that's being generated. That's my point. But I understand that we have well, I understand your position. Okay, in terms of the capitalization rate that we've applied here, do you have any support for that 7% for this building that is nearing 100 years old in the downtown, and that you've quite rightly, I think, classified as a Class D? Do you have any support for that cap rate, which we believe to be on the very low end?
For 7%, no, we don't bring capitalization rate direct comparables or cap rates. We do have our chart. Obviously, a C and a D would not be inclusive of that chart.
Right, and the charts, I mean, the brokers clearly will be looking at more investment grade properties, but not inclusive of let's say Class C and D. But does it not stand to reason then, Mr. Pohl, that if downtown B, two of your three reports here, and I believe the Colliers was updated, but they're suggesting that the Bs are in that 8 to 8.5. So then, does it not seem aggressively low that our property would be applied only a 7% cap rate?
That's what was predicted. I don't think it's out of range. It's within range. You're looking at a different property type class with different type of tenancies and covenants on those leases. So that investment vehicle per se is different than what you get typically on a C or a D. You're typically not looking at 2 5-year terms plus an option to renew, where your more investment grade leases for those buildings would be based on. For these type of properties, you're looking more your 3 to 5 year leases. You're not looking at long-term leases for a season.
Right.
So,
Right. So should we not then, does it not stand to reason that if A is the top quality and B is one step down, D would be 2 steps down from that. So
no,
that's
let me
7%.
rephrase it. You shouldn't be looking at them and comparing them. They're different property type class. They're different income producing properties. To use that as a correlation, I don't know if that's a fair reflection.
Okay. In your model, the A's have a lower cap rate than the B's, though,
Yeah.
just to be fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Really, we're really just discussing cap rates here today, and I will address the issue of the 15.1 in my presentation. So those are my questions, Mr. Pohl. I thank you, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions for the assessor?
No, I don't think so, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
So the 15.1 was for the tax year 2025, correct? 37, page 37.
Yes.
Okay, and then we're doing tax year 2026, correct?
Right.
Okay. That's the only question I had. Well, Mr. Story, you may begin your presentation.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I do want to address the this 15-1 issue. So, and just to be very clear, we're certainly not in the habit of appealing on the second year, but this is a very specific and very unique situation where we were contacted by the owner because the agreement effectively from his warranting was signed without his consent, and was not happy about it, and now we've been asked to pursue this appeal. So it was an agreement that was signed without his specific consent, and that is why we are here. Now, when we sign 15-1s, we do ensure that we have consent from owners. So it is a very, very specific situation, and I would like to stress to the board that we are not in the habit of or to be perceived to be going back on agreements. That is not what we're here to do. This is a very, very specific situation. So I do understand Mr. Pohl's concern, but this is again, very, very unique and what I would consider something of a singular situation. So ultimately, that is the reason why we're here, but it is not something that we take lightly, and not something that we do often at all or ever, frankly. But this is the situation. So ultimately, and I have made a correction here. I've accepted Mr. Pohl's NOI. I was missing about 300 feet. So in the grand scheme of things, the NOI of 60,103 is reasonable. So we're not challenging that. There was an error in our shortfall as well. So ultimately, the NOI is aligned. We were not far off to begin with. So I will limit my discussion to matters of the cap rate. I have inspected this building a number of times. In fact, it was when I started in this business, it was the first building I ever inspected. So I have known the owner for some time, and I've inspected it a number of times. I'm well aware of the issues, and I am here to ensure that his concerns are communicated adequately to the board and to the assessment department. So we have a property on Fort between Broadway and York. The site size is 18,059 feet. It was originally built in 1929. It was the original Radio Industries building. It was then tenanted by Beaver Lumber for some time. And then Moody Moore took it over in 1984. I believe our folks have been in here, I'm guessing, but I think it's sometime since about the late 90s or some such thing, though I can't be completely sure. Ultimately is a building that is almost 100 years old, and it does carry substantial concerns in terms of maintenance. There's a fair bit of deferred maintenance here, and that is what has given rise to our request to adjust both the cap rates on the parking as well as the cap rate on the main holding, the office building. So we're using a cap rate of 6% on the parking to address the required maintenance, and a cap rate of 8.5, which is our baseline capitalization rate for Class D offices in the downtown. And that is indeed supported by the chart that the assessor has submitted, as well as our standalone cap rate study. And it does, I think it is fair to reason that if the brokers are looking at 8.5% cap rates on a Class B building for some of the latest and greatest buildings in our downtown, then this much older building with maintenance issues should be applied at a minimum a capitalization rate of 8.5%. So with my adjusted NOI and with the adjustment of the parking, I come to a rounded value of $1,267,000. So it is a modest request here, but I do believe that it does capture the issues that the owner has communicated, and I believe that will help with some of those frustrations. If you review page 21, you can see that it is a below average fit up, as Mr. Pohl has asked about. Very basic. I've not made any adjustment for condition, but it would not be considered. I think I know what the assessor is alluding to. If you have maybe a a newer design firm or architectural firm or something. And in some cases, you will see interiors that are a little more, up to date. These are certainly dated finishes, and I would not call this a above average fit up. I have a number of the tenancies shown here. And I know that Mr. Pohl will ask me, so I can tell you that 2 of the 3 tenants are owner occupied. One of the tenants, you can see in the title search that was conducted by the department, there is a title, there's a lease registered on title. That is not an owner of the building, and that is indeed an overholding on a month to month. So it is, but I do agree that that is not completely typical. But for the purpose of our discussion today, we're not discussing the rents, it's simply cap rate. I have photos from the what is called the mechanical penthouse on the roof. You can see those loose paving stones. You can see the roof area that I've included, as well as general condition of the parking lot. If I go forward, there's also, now I've made no adjustment for this, but I did say that I would mention it. There's a nuisance, there's nuisance behavior on this site, great deal that is a source of frustration for the owner. There is also there's a property that is adjacent that is leading to some further nuisance behavior. So I did want to make the panel aware of that. It is part and parcel of the of the ownership of this property, and these are the concerns. On my page 48, I had alluded to the concrete frame of 1 square foot. That's the parking lot. So you can see that the building was indeed built in 1929, and what they're calling on the city record Building 2, Section 1, that's the parking from 1950. So we've talked about the permits. I have the permit search in here, and as I mentioned, the last permit was in 2012. And then I have these quotes for work. They have not been refreshed, so you would have to clearly adjust them with the increased cost of construction from 2015 up until our reference date of April 1, 2023. But you can see very clearly that broadly there's about $400,000 worth of work that need to be done on this property. And we can certainly, going forward, as these maintenance items have not been cured, we can certainly request refreshed quotes for the refreshed estimate of the scope of work. But I haven't made a below the line deduction with these stale dated estimates, but it does speak to the fact that there is deferred maintenance in the property. It does indeed support our request for adjusted cap rates on both the parking and the main holding, and we do respectfully submit that a value of $1,267,000 may be optimistic, but we do believe that it is in line with investor sentiment on a site specific review of this property. And with that, I am open to your questions, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pohl, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I just want to go through the photos with you.
Sure.
I have a few other questions, but starting on your page 21.
Yep.
This would be your main floor area, which is the 2 people grade.
No, that's the second floor. That's Nova 3.
Nova 3.
Yep.
Okay. I just see that there's a concrete column, and above that is main floor. Typically you'd have concrete floor in this building. You see the 2-way slab and the shear support underneath it. Are you sure this is not in the basement?
I am positive. Yeah, I am absolutely positive that that is the Nova 3 space.
Usually wouldn't put a concrete slab roof. Okay.
Well, Mr. Pohl, I would be very, very happy to take you through this building, and that would remove some of the mystery, I suppose, and you can see it for yourself. But no, that is certainly the space that's tenanted by Nova 3.
Page 22.
Yep.
Main floor or upper floor?
Upper floor. That is when you first walk in. There's a little area, sort of a meeting room. That is second floor as well.
Okay, so page 23, same question. Main floor or upper floor?
Upper floor. And we're getting to, so the main, this is mostly the upper floor. The main floor begins on page 28.
Okay, so the next question I have is, how many bathrooms are in this building? Do you have bathroom, kitchen area in each separate CRU? Or is there one common bathroom for the entire building?
Oh, that's a very good question. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I would presume that they would have, that they would each have wash. I don't know. I would be guessing, but I've not. It's not been. It's not come to my attention that there was a lack of washroom facilities. So I would
My
assume that
question
it would meet the
regarding that
requirement.
is if we already have some inaccurate reporting on this property by the property owner indicating that, not indicating that they're owner occupied, then we see a month-to-month leases as such. How can you lease out different CRUs if they don't have washroom accesses?
I'm sorry. How can what?
How can you lease out this building if you have 3 separate CRUs? If one CRU has the lunchroom and the washroom facilities, and you want your other arm's length tenants, how are they to use the washroom if there's no washrooms?
I didn't say there's no washrooms. I said that they have adequate washrooms. I'm not making any comments about the amount of washrooms. I presume that each unit has their own dedicated washroom. I'm not suggesting that there's shared washrooms.
But you can't confirm that one way or the
No,
other.
you know what, it did not occur to me to count the washrooms while I was there, but I've also not made any comment about a deficiency in that regard. So I would assume that it would be they all have their own, but I will certainly check on it. And to your comment about the reporting, I will certainly mention to the owner that that he should mark off that it is indeed partially owner occupied, so that we don't have to
It
have
does get back
these
to how
questions
this
each hearing.
property would be leased out, though. If you have a common washroom on the main floor that everyone can use, even your upper tenancies moving down, they can use it. Or if that washroom, and it does appear to be embedded within a CRU, there's no way to lease this property out. It has to be just a singular CRU, treated as a singular CRU. Otherwise, you have no ability for your tenants to use the washroom because your independent tenant controls that. Potentially that one washroom wouldn't let arm's length tenants in their CRU. So
to be fair, Mr. Pohl, you're speaking in very theoretical terms here. I'm not totally following the line of questioning with regard to washrooms. I would say it's safe to assume that each unit is leasable and has adequate washroom facilities.
Generally speaking, as we go through the building, you didn't label what was main floor, what was upper. It just
No, I didn't know, and I will next time. That's a very good point, and I will take note of that.
Again, my background is structural engineering technology. I see concrete piers, slab on grade roof. Typically would not be a main floor roof system, being a concrete roof system, but that's what
well. Again, you're invited to see the building at any point. I'd be happy to walk you through, and but these are the photos, and I can say with great certainty I've visited the owner a number of times. It's someone I know personally, and that is indeed the space that he tenants.
Just to further the point, though, on page 34, we see masonry wall. In that dark corner up top, that does look like steel deck, which would be typical of
That is I believe I mentioned that is what's called the mechanical penthouse. That was added in, I believe, 1962. That is on the top of the roof. That's a little, that's how you get from the main part of the building up the stairs out onto the roof.
Okay. What would be the purpose on 41 of you including a picture of the beam for the outside of the canopy?
I'm just giving you a sense of that this is well, the purpose is, well, okay, so we're providing you with a great many photos to show you the quality and condition of the property. That is the area where that's the back parking, sort of semi-covered parking that was added. So I'm oh, well, and also I'm showing that to you because the owner did ask me to mention that they do have nuisance behavior whereby people have been cutting through some of that metal and trying to I suppose, harvested for scrap. So thank you for reminding me of that. That is a going concern of the owner with regards to that
Page
parking
41,
area.
that when I'm looking at it, is a wood roof system supporting on a masonry wall. There's no load bearing, compression
Okay,
failures.
if you
Cracking.
looked
It
at
looks like
page
it's in perfect
43,
shape.
no, Mr. Pohl, if you looked at page 43, that little semi-covered parking, that's a close-up of that.
I'm aware of that. I'm completely aware of that. What I'm showing you is on page 41, this is an exposed wood roof structure over the canopy area that looks in perfect shape. There's no bearing failure, there's no shear failure, there's no cracking in the wall, there's no anything
Hold on,
here.
hold on. You haven't inspected this, so that's
I'm looking at the picture you provided. What are you trying to? What do you expect for the assessor or the board to glean from this? Like, what are we
well,
looking?
you've mentioned a number of times that you hadn't seen enough photos, and now I've provided a number of photos, and so I'm not sure if you'd like more photos or less photos, but ultimately this is a source of this parking area is indeed a source of frustration for the owner, and we are making that clear to you as a member of the assessment department and to the board.
What is the purpose on page 44 and 45? The inclusion of the neighboring property.
Yeah, I had mentioned in my narrative that was a nuisance property that the owner is where they're finding paraphernalia and all sorts of it's a negative influence. So I mentioned it in my narrative. So I thought it only fair that I provide the board with some photos of that property that is causing some stress to the owner.
Okay, so getting back to the exposed wood beam that I was trying to get to, and the roof system that was being highlighted there. As far as any of the quotes that you have, again, they're dated.
Yep.
None have been completed.
None of these have been completed. No, and I did confirm that with the owner.
So how would these be useful in determining what a net operating income would be if these are capital costs that wouldn't be applied to a net operating income?
We're not disputing the net operating income. We're discussing condition. I'm suggesting to you that I have not made an adjustment over and above what I believe the appropriate capitalization rate would be for a Class D office downtown. And I am showing that in support of our request, there is deferred maintenance here.
Okay, so that aspect, although you reviewed it, you're putting no weight on it too.
No, I'm suggesting to you that it speaks to risk, and that's just in further support of our capitalization rate adjustment. And again, we are making a very a request for a modest reduction that captures, in my mind, all of these issues. And I think we've been quite fair in that regard.
If you turn to your page, bear with me, I'm catching up with myself. Page 19.
I'm sorry, did you say page 19?
Page 19.
Okay, yeah.
Look, I have two workups. Obviously, you didn't have access to them. They're part of my submission. Our opinion of value has changed, but you have access to what was on file. We had 640,000 for the parking lot for value wise. You have reported 560,000. Is that mistaken agree or?
No, 560 is based on, and I've included it narratively that we've accepted your NOI. We're not disputing it. We are recognizing it that it is theoretical, as I mentioned in my questioning to you, that it's not being capitalized at this point. And we do know that the parking lot needs somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 worth of work, depending on the scope of work, and that's warranted by the owners.
You have a workup for your parking value of 560?
No, well, it's simply taking the agreed upon NOI and capitalizing it at 6% cap rate.
That's the only questions I have. I can address the rest in summation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions for the applicant?
So just to be sure, you've agreed on the NOI of 60,102, and it's just the cap rate that we're needing to discuss?
Precisely. Yes, we are suggesting 8.5. But that's on the main holding, and to address some of the issues regarding the work that need to be done on the parking, we've used a cap rate of 6%. So for the main building, that's quite right. We've agreed on the NOI, but we've applied a cap rate of 8.5%, which is the baseline for Class D buildings.
Okay, and then your parking is 560 and the city's is 640, correct?
Correct, yes. And that accounts for the work that is required to replace the receptacles, the paving, and any other work. So,
Mhm.
so I think that is a clean way to capture some of that maintenance that needs to be done. And I do want to point out once again that this is not a lot like an Indigo or a private parking lot that is capitalized. This is purely theoretical income. There is value to it. We do agree with that. However, we've used a higher cap rate than the assessor in that regard. So, but you're quite right. We're simply talking about adjustments to the cap rate on a site-specific review of the property.
So the employees have parking included in their salary, correct?
Included in their salary? I'm not
Because
sure.
they get to park there and they don't have to pay for it.
Oh, yeah, I guess that would be
Because
correct.
it's the
Yeah,
employees parking there. It's not
for the
somebody
tenants.
else parking there and
That's
not
right.
paying for parking, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and then I had one more question. I should have written it down. Shoot. I'll come back to it if I can think of it.
Thank you.
Okay, excuse me, Mr. Mann, you have any questions for the applicant?
I do, with respect, first of all, to the 15-1 that was agreed last year. The allegation or the indication you gave was that was given without the consent of the owner. Generally speaking, is there a disciplinary process with respect to agents? Because there's going to be some financial ramifications for an agreement that is not approved by the owner. Financial ramifications both in payments to the owner and in increased taxes. Is that something that has been explored?
That is, well, that's a question for a lawyer, not for for a tax agent. So I can't
Fair
speak
enough.
to it, sir.
I might be beyond relevance there, but a little bit. Going to the specific site here, the subject building is, but looking at your valuations, the 694,000 and the 560,000 approximately, that's a 55% split to a 45% split for the value of the building or the unit and the parking lot. Is that a typical allocation, or could that be considered a typical allocation between building and parking lots for downtown buildings?
Well, that's a very good question. Just to be clear, though, sir, the income value that we're proposing is actually adjusted now to 707. But I see what you're saying. Yeah, in terms of the split, I did note that as well. I suppose it's very close. You would presume that the parking would be lower than the value of the building, particularly with reduced demand in parking in the downtown post-COVID and hybrid work and that sort of thing. I suppose if we look at this as a single economic unit that is comprised of these two contributing streams, that it does make sense on balance. But I do appreciate your comment, and it gave me some pause as well. But I think ultimately, if we were looking at just the building, and if we were looking at the parking lot, and if it were professionally managed and upgraded to the standard of these other parking lots that are put to market and advertised for monthly or hourly parking, that might be. It might very well be higher. There are buildings with parking where there's not a separate contribution in the assessment. So it's hard to say. I'm cautious not to make a blanket statement, but I suppose the way that we look at it is one single economic unit between the parking and the building, and we do recognize that the parking is adding value to the main holding, and that's how we get to our value. But it is an interesting situation where we have that allocation that looks very close. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So the value that you're asking for then is it 1,267,000? Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. Yes.
So your page 19 then has been adjusted to the city's NOI. It's not the 59,000 on the building. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. So it's that 60,102 capitalized at 8.5, and
Right.
that rounds to 707. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. I have no further questions.
I
Anything
kind
in
of did
summation?
remember my other question.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
It's got to do with the previous assessment done in January. So when an assessment is done and somebody represents the owner, and that is accepted at the board meeting or however it's accepted, how can it be challenged again?
So the issue that we have is the owner contacted us because his contention is that the agreement was signed without his consent. So he was not aware of the agreement. It was signed and he didn't agree with it. And that's why we're here today. Unfortunately, it's not a
Okay.
it's a unique situation, but
So if
that
it's accepted with the city, wouldn't the owner then sue the guy who accepted it
again,
to get his difference
I'm not
back as
sure.
opposed to come back to the city again?
Again, that as Mr. Mann asked
Yeah,
the
the
line
lawyers
question,
can, okay.
I cannot
Yeah.
hold myself as having any knowledge of
Yeah, okay.
legal issues, so I
Okay.
defer to you. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, that will complete item number 6, 124th Street. Well, Mr. Story, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
We are going to go on to our last item, which was item number 3, 633 Lodge Avenue. And we decided that we would hear this property. So, Mr. Pohl, can you read this in, please? Read this property in.
25, file number 25-24-1. Roll number is 070716930000, 633 Lodge. The date for the roll is 2026, and it's assessed at $6,162,000. Building was effective age is 1978. We have approximately leasable area of 32,367 square feet. I took a bit of a look at this property, a bit more in depth. But I'll go through it as we see. On page 2 indicates the permit search that we have. All permits are typical of tenant improvements for or lease ups for existing and new tenants. So as you see, that's typical of what you see. And there are some dating back a bit ways, but there are some more recent ones in 2014, 15, and 17. I did look for this property. We did have a sale at $6,900,000. It doesn't show up on some land titles. Looks like it was a shared sale. Some properties are in the market, get traded. You have a holding company or said whatnot. You buy the holding company, it comes with the land. So the real estate wouldn't necessarily show up at land titles. So it does look like there is a sale at $6,900,000 in 2011. But follow up to that, I'll just get to this in a moment. There was a 2023 sale as well. So the property itself is just highlighted here. Purchaser is facilitated by Cushman Wakefield. The property was a medical clinic, a significant excess land component. Leasing at the time of sale, property was fully leased to tenants with long-term commitments. Development potential, again, leading back to excessive land or excessive land. Sorry, guys. Okay. It's commonly known as the Savoy Medical Clinic. Still operates now. And the next page over is from the website of the investor who handled the sale, the agent who handled the sale, I should say. Although terms weren't disclosed, it was sold and was sold right at the reference date. So I was hoping to get more information on that, part of the discovery process, but it doesn't appear that we'll have that today. So as we go along, page 5, I'll review the property as I typically do. Leases are attached. I'll show you them in a moment. The subject property description, again, it's located just off of the Grace Hospital. You see it on Booth, Sturgeon Portage area. As soon as you pull off of Booth, it comes right to your main building there where it forks is the medical center. So if you look at page 6, you do see that there is some excess land. I didn't put any weight to it for the excess land portion of it. I did review the property in full independently of the model. But it's a significant parking lot. I don't know how much you would necessarily want to play with it. It is an income producing property lot. It is an in-park lot. So if you look at the operation of the building, when you go to this lot, you have paid per hour lot, and you also have a portion of it which is employee parking or monthly parking. So the combination of the two, you have a pretty good income stream here, especially when you're next to the Grace and you're running in a medical office facility there. To carve out any excess land there in order to take away from that parking revenue and the operation of the building, I don't think is necessarily, I don't know if that'd be the right way to go with it. So I didn't do any excess land addition on for that one. As we go through, page 7 just indicates and onwards just indicates what's in place. There's medical, there's pharmacy, there's walk-in clinic. You look at the finishings, they're typical, above average, obviously, as you would in medical clinics. You have above average finishings, and these are what we have on file. So page 10, there's a Dynacare in there. So you have pharmacy, medical lab, Symboyne clinic. Getting to page 12 is the in-park lot that I was speaking of. The in-park lot, again, is coin operated, or I should say coinage, I should common term is coinage, transient if you want to call it that kind of experience. Yeah, you're going to the medical clinic, you're paying for your parking as you stay there. If you're an employee, you're also paying per month. So the next page over. And that is as of 2011. I didn't go on site to take this photograph. I used the Google Earth. The last Google Earth they had imagery was in 2011, and that's the month, that's the hourly rates that they had in place. So assuming that there may be a bit of escalation, that it's over a decade later, or it may be the same, I'm not sure. If you look at page 15, this is lot number 337, Symboyne Clinic. As far as in-park, clearly, if in-park's running in-park tries to generate as much money as they can for the property owner, they take a portion of that as part of their agreement. They're generating as much income as they can. It's not sitting stagnant. It's actively being managed by in-park. So the next page over, they indicate it's $2.50 for hourly. For in-park, they indicate it's $9 all day. Evening and weekends, $4. And then they have staff parking, both random and unplugged at $20 to $30. And then plugged at $35 to $45 or $35 to $40. So, and that is as of their website, in-park's website. So the signage is a little different. That's what I wanted to point out. I didn't have up-to-date photos, but the actual as of the January 1st indicates that's the rates that they're charging to the people who are parking on the lot. We don't have a parking income stream for it. It was missed. After reviewing this property, this isn't a surplus excess amount of land where you do have a bit of cash money being generated on the lot, being managed by in-park. It's a commercially viable parking lot. It should be assessed. If you look at page 17, we have 47 comparables that are in the southwest quadrant for medical office use, some of which include pharmacies, some of which include office tenants, office medical tenants, such nature. We see that for 131,000 square feet of inventory over the 47 comps, an average rate is $22.90 $22.72 for weighted average and median of 22. So pretty consistent range, pretty tight range. And then on the next page over on 18, I bracketed out just the comparables that are nearby on Portage. So get a more localized look rather than the west quadrant. You're looking pretty close to the subject property. You're getting the same 22.50, 23.31, and 22.75 for those three same average, weighted average and median parameters. So I do think the assessed value as far as the rental rate should be in and around there. What you're looking at the next page over is a review of what we have on file. What we have on file modeled was $15.43 inclusive for the entire property on overall. We think that's a bit below. We see that there is no actual parking. We did model that. So the parameters that we have in place, we have for 32,367 square feet, we have PGI of 499,565, capped at 5%. Gives us effective gross income of $472,089. Expenses at 3%, shortfall at $8, gives a net operating income of $443,685, capped at model driven 7.2%, gives us a capitalized value of $6,162,000. So part of what we always do and should do is you look at market, you also look at contract, you see how the two are, and then you can reconcile between the two. So what I see here is we missed the parking income stream, a significant parking income stream. We look at the actual NOIs with the mortgage expense removed. The NOI is actually $712,399. Parking value not accounted for. The actual parking revenue is $138,168. Was reported to us on the INEs. And the leasable area that's nominally different. You expect a bit of variance for tenant fit ups, stuff like that. It was reported at 31,964. We had it modeled at 32,363, so a little bit more. But realistically, the property far exceeds what our model generated. We missed the parking, and it's under market as far as rents. So that's how we come to the $6,162,000. On page 21 is a review of independent from the model, how I would look at it. We should be putting on overall to the building the corrected leasable area of 31,964, which was reported. Again, there was some variance in permits, there was some tenant fit ups, what's there now. As far as best as we can tell, reported from the INEs. I think a bit below what the average is at $20 a square foot is more appropriate, which gives us $639,280 for PGI. Same standard parameters at 5.5%, vacancy, expenses, and non-recoverable expenses at 3%, shortfall at $8, gives a total net operating income for the building at $571,932, capped at 7.2%, gives us $7,943,498. You look at the stalls. If you just look at this, what's reporting as far as which I've already referenced, the 138,168 net revenue, that at about 65%. You're looking at a surface parking net income of around 89,890, capped at 5%. Gives us a 1,796,184. So the total rounded is approximately 9.7 over 9,740,000. That's what I can gather from market data, site specific performance of the parking, which I think should be relied on, given the park running up a lot, given the location closeness to the Grace Hospital. There's obviously a driver there. I don't think any excess land should be put on it because it would impede the parking revenue that you could get. So I don't see the justification putting that in at this time anyways. So that's what I think the value should be. I'm not asking for an increase, obviously, but that's my independent review of what our model parameter was. And in this case here, we missed, it was favorable to this, to the taxpayer. So with that, hopefully questions.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, any questions for the assessor?
No, sir.
Mr. Mann, any questions for the assessor?
The only question I have with respect, and it's with regard to your workup on page 21, you've used a rental rate of $20 a square foot. That is still considerably lower than the master rent roll, which has been included, is it not? Or does that take something in?
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't speak to their gross, the reporting is gross.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, you can't look at it the same way, they're two different.
Right.
So
I
we're
see
doing it on a net rent basis for market.
Right.
What I chose to do when you're looking at a gross rent, when you're looking at it all encompassing, there are different leasing mechanisms with different lease risks associated with it, obviously. But what I looked down when it whittles up to what the NOI was, the actual reported NOI.
Right.
The actual reported NOI was significantly higher than what our model parameter was, and obviously rent's included in that, but you're also missing the entirety of the parking. We didn't include that. So
Right.
when looking at the actual NOI, taking off the mortgage expense as you should, you're a little above 700,000. So.
Okay, thank you. I needed that because I looked at the
sorry.
adjusted NOI that had been highlighted on page 23, and I was trying to reconcile that last night with some little success, but that does make sense from a gross perspective now. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have no questions. Anything in summation, Mr. Pohl?
No.
Somebody needs to be let out there. That will conclude item number 3, 633 Lodge. And we have heard all the items scheduled today, and this hearing is now adjourned.
I'll go take us offline, Mr. Chair. Just a moment, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pohl, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Presentations, I should say.
I think the mail came.
I think the dog beat me to the adjournment. Yes. Well,
He's not always as helpful as you might think.